Detective Comics 23.1, aka Poison Ivy, written by Derek Friedolf's, art by Javier Pina. So we open up in the middle of Forever Evil stuff, like the whole city of Gotham's on fire, more or less. And we open with a quote that I actually like. Civilization is the occasional, but always temporary, interruption of the jungle. I like that. So we see all these people, committing crimes, looting, stuff like that. And Poison Ivy starts marking her way down the street. And she's like, well, Gotham has always had its protectors. It's always had peaceful. It's had Batman. Now there isn't. So it's falling apart. And you know what? I'm cool with that. So as she walks down the street, she sees these people looting, and she puts her hands on their cheek, and they just immediately drop dead. We see some people approaching her with bats and weapons, and she just turns them on each other. And then finally she reaches a woman who is trying to outrun this man who is apparently an abusive husband, and saying, where's my daughter? I deserve to see her. I'm the one who's her dad. You gotta let me see her. And we see that the daughter is hiding behind a bush, and it cuts to a flashback sequence for Pamela Isley. And I want to say real quick, the entire flashback sequence is done in watercolors, and they make it look like it is on canvas instead of paper. I love this look. This is a fantastic way to not only get the innocence of the youth, while also clearly delineating that it's a flashback. Just fantastically done. So we see that she's a very young child here, probably 6 or 7. Her parents are fighting inside the house. Turns out she has some sort of disease where she can't be out in the sun for very long, so she's forced to wear lotion and wear a wide-brimmed hat. And her father's the one who's paying for all of this stuff, but her mom is the one who's saying, no, she needs to get out there. She needs to enjoy the world, whereas dad is keeping her locked up. And the dad ends up beating the mom, ends up punching her. So the mom heads out into the garden, starts gardening, and she has a black eye at this point. And Pamela's like, Mom, your face. And it's just like, oh, it's okay, honey. Sometimes parents disagree. It's not for you to worry about. And we see that the dad always comes back to the mom after he does something like this with a bunch of flowers to go in the garden. So as he abuses her more and more and more, the garden grows more and more and more. And that's where Pamela learned that the flowers could be used to manipulate others. So we see the abusive husband about to attack the wife, and all of a sudden he's strung up by a bunch of vines. And Poison Ivy's like, hey, you can watch him die slowly, or you can speed it along, but be careful if you try to free him, because it might kill you too. Okay, bye. So then she makes her way down to the Gotham Botanical Garden, and it turns out a bunch of hoodlums are setting it on fire. They are throwing Molotov cocktails, and they are lighting the whole thing on fire. And as she watches them dance around on the ashes, she flashes back to her father getting arrested because of the fact that he basically went too far one day, and he ended up killing her mother, and he buried her out in the garden that she took so long to build. So that's where she learned that she could never lose control of herself. So we see Poison Ivy coming up to the guy setting fire to the garden. She's like, no, I get it. You like destroying weaker things. You like killing smaller things because they can't fight back. That's how I feel about you, as she drags them under the ground and says, the garden will come back. You all are about to die forever. So as she makes her way down to the Gotham Park, she shows that back in college, she came up with this pheromone pill, and she tested it out on some local kids as basically a drug dealer, and she was arrested for it. But turns out that one of the first people that she got on the pill was her dean, and so the dean was able to basically get the charges all dismissed, and she was able to graduate with honors, more or less. So as she's walking through the park, she's attacked by a gang. Gang's like, this is our turf, you need to get to stepping. And she just immediately whips the guns out of their hands, attacks them with some huge spiky thorns, and then summons these big green monster looking things saying, hey, tell the rest of your gang, this is my turf now. It listens to me. So we see 2 cops that are trying to deal with everything going on in Gotham, and as they're driving in a car, it almost hits Pam, and then she flashes back again to when she visits her dad in jail. It's the first time she's seen him since then, and she just sits in silence staring at him for a while until finally She makes the first move, lunges over the table, and gives him a big kiss on the lips. And immediately the guards are like, what the hell? Get her out of here. What is she doing? And turns out that later that night, he died of a heart attack. And by the time the coroner had time to do an autopsy, the poison on her lips had already dissipated. So she then goes up to the cops that almost hit her. They swerved out of the way. And she basically goes up to the cops and say, hey, your department didn't save my mom. You failed her. You failed me. So I'm going to show you the same thing that I showed my dad. And she gives them both a kiss, and they die in seconds. So at this point, she makes her way over to Wayne Tower, and she sicks all of her green monsters on the people trying to stop her as she makes her way higher up. And we see that after college, she made her way. She got into Wayne Enterprises, specifically their chemical R&D department, and she tried to basically pitch to Bruce Wayne, hey, pheromones. We can basically use it to target people individually for products. It will make it so that our marketing department is not even necessary, and we can use this for like military applications as well. And Bruce is like, I hear you, I get it. That sounds nightmarish. You have to give people the choice. Like, you can't just rob them of that. I'm not letting you do this. And she's like, well, fine, I'll take it around, I'll shop it elsewhere. And he's like, no, your contract says that everything you develop in Wayne Enterprises belongs to Wayne Enterprises. The reason I want you to make this clear to you. The reason I am stopping this is not out of some personal vendetta against you. Like, you seem like a decent enough person. It's because what you're saying is mind control and brainwashing. And that's not cool. It's against ethical standards. And so she storms out, goes back down to the lab. She tries stealing all of her work back so that she is able to pitch it somewhere else. But security grabs hold of her, and a bunch of chemicals land on her. So at that point, we see in Wayne Enterprises, she's loading up a whole bunch of bags of what I can only assume is fertilizer. As she says, once those chemicals spilled on me, I got a connection to the green, and I heard the plants, they talked to me. I had they called me an eco-terrorist. I even had some people in my side for a while. I worked with the birds of prey. Remember that? That happened like 2 years ago, but now I'm on my own. And she stands across the street from Wayne Enterprises, and she just explodes it. The whole building just explodes. And she watches on, and she's like, I have a vision for what this city can be without Batman, with only the jungle taking over. And we see the zoomed out shot of the city. Like, half the city is covered in leaves and grass and foliage. And as she's standing on top of the building, turns out it's GCPD. Gordon comes up. He's got his gun trained on her, and she just leaps off the edge of the building and says, without Batman, without any obstacles to get in my way, the Green Kingdom will flourish. So it sounds like she's about to take over the entirety of Gotham, more or less. So I'm curious to see if this is going to tie in with a Forever Evil spin-off series. I think there's one that's specifically focused on Gotham, if I'm remembering correctly. It's like Arkham something. I don't know. Regardless, I'm interested to see where it goes, how much Poison Ivy is really going to be making a push here. Obviously, this is not anti-hero Poison Ivy. This is much more of villain, so we'll see where that slow transition takes place, if ever. But I'm going to give this one I'll give it an 8. I think it's very well written. I think the art looks great, and I really got to give credit for those flashback sequences because they are just beautiful looking. The watercolor is just fantastic. So you know what? I'm actually going to go even higher. I'm going to give it an 8.5. I really enjoyed this issue. It was a very good issue.